Hello and welcome to another edition of the Score Sweeper Keeper podcast. Today's episode is presented by our friends at EA Sports, who brought the most prestigious club competition to FIFA 19 by introducing the UEFA Champions League, featuring official match presentation, a variety of tournament options, and an all-new commentary team, all available right now in FIFA 19. I'm your host, Gianluca Nesci, and just like yesterday, today's episode is also all about the Champions League. We've got another video podcast for you today, so you have to put up with our faces for one more day. I'm looking at the camera right now. I'm sorry. I apologize. We don't have Daniel Rouse here today, but we do have a new face in the studio. We've lost the British twang. He's been replaced by the dulcet tones of Mr. Anthony Lopopolo, who does do, in fairness, a very good Daniel Rouse impression.
All right.
There you go. I think it's actually better than Rouse, in fairness. Sitting next to him, he's back once again, the self-proclaimed Paulo Dybala lookalike. There's been some debate online about the veracity of that claim, but Mr. Michael Chandler is here.
Ciao bellos and also ciao bellas. Today I am sharing the studio with my two Italian co-hosts on a wonderful day for Italian football.
Very good. It was, and we will get to that once we get started. A quick reminder, listeners, you can find the standard audio-only version of this show wherever you've been listening to the podcast, the Score app, iTunes, SoundCloud. Head over there if you want to get all the analysis without having to stare at us for 30 minutes. All right, guys, let's jump into it, and let's start with the big one, not involving an Italian side. Not just yet. We'll get there. Tottenham against Barcelona at a pretty rugged Wembley pitch. Messi, man, just more Messi magic. Him and Suarez combine for a 4-2 victory over Spurs. This one was really fun.
Yeah, quite remarkable that none of Tottenham's three makeshift stadiums are fit to host a match. The lawn was, resembling my neighbor Gary's front lawn. It was really patchy after Wembley hosted the Anthony Joshua fight. But you're right, it was a frenetic kind of end-to-end battle. And we talk about, individuals and how they kind of rise to the occasion in Champions League. Today was one of my favorite performances from Leo Messi in recent memory.
I mean, Tottenham basically gave him the whole field to run through. It was never really all that difficult for Messi after all of that. And obviously he hit 2 posts and he scored that wonderful goal. But at the end of the day, Tottenham had to do a better job tracking Messi. I mean, he's one of the best players to ever play the game. And you'd think that he would get a little harsher treatment away from home. But of course, Tottenham had some key injuries and they just couldn't keep him out of the game.
Yeah, you're right, Anthony. They missed 6, key people today. Vertonghen was a big miss, as was Moussa Dembele. And you talk about them not really pressuring Messi. He was collecting the ball very deep and making these sort of like unaccosted runs through the midfield. A lot of that was because Victor Wanyama does not look match fit. And another, kind of element was that Wanyama was on a yellow, and he was kind of afraid of getting too close to Messi for fear of being sent off. But it's a little befuddling to me. I've had a few questions about Mauricio Pochettino's tactics this year. They were so resolute and compact last year, playing with that back three and the 2 wing backs. Today, they went to the more traditional back four, the 4 defenders at the back, and they were, a lot of channels for Messi to run through. Luis Suarez wasn't remarkable on the ball, but he had 2 really, really kind of sublime dummies that both led to goals. Questions about Spurs. I expected Barcelona to win this match, but I'm not quite sure why they've gotten away from that sort of really rigid, compact sort of defensive setup.
Yeah, and I mean, for Barcelona, look, Messi, obviously outstanding, the best player in the world, in my opinion, and he did his thing today. Barcelona defensively, Spurs, whether or not they had, some of these guys they were missing, they created chances, especially when they were down 3-2 and pushing for an equalizer, Anthony. Are there still some questions about Barca here and the defensive phase and if they're actually good enough, despite how great they are up front with Messi and Suarez, to compete for a Champions League title this year?
I absolutely think there are massive question marks at the back. Piqué has definitely not had one of his best seasons, and there are questions about his long-term future there. And I think Spurs had no business being in this game, to be quite honest. I mean, Barcelona could have been 4 or 5-0 up at a certain point, but obviously Messi was unlucky with those posts. But even Barca conceding that second goal to Lamela was kind of unlucky as well. So I'm not going to put too much blame on their back line, but again, they didn't close out this game when they should have, and that's on the defense as well as the offense.
Yeah, quite remarkable that even we talk about Harry Kane looking, sluggish and out of form. They nearly snatch a point from the jaws of defeat when that really, really great individual goal from the English talisman kind of opened the match up. And then, not one for drama. Barcelona came down moments later and made it 3-1. But, you have to, it's commendable from Tottenham. They were missing a lot of big players. Tactically, I think they got it wrong. And they were still in the match against, like I said, one of, the most outstanding individual performances I've seen from Messi in quite some time.
Yeah, and you look at that group now, Group B, Barca and Inter are tied on 6 points after Inter's slim win over PSV. They came back from 1-0 down. Raja Nainggolan, Mauro Icardi, who seems to be starting to heat up, Anthony, as we go along here. He had a slow start, but he got the winner. So now both sides, Barca and Inter, are 2 for 2 to start the Champions League on 6 points. Spurs are in a little bit of trouble here now, Chandler.
Yeah, and look, if Inter goes down 1-0 in a Champions League match, run to your local bookies because they're going to win 2-1, and it will be Mauro Icardi, Maxi Lopez's bestie there with the match winner.
Yeah, and we have to give a shout out to Nainggolan too, because this guy seems to always score goals from the hardest situations. Always from outside the box, and the ball just has to bounce them in the right way, and he'll hit into the back of the net. And that's what he did here against PSV. But Inter, as a collective, with 17 shots in the first half alone. So they came here and they meant business. And it looks like that win over Spurs is kind of, no pun intended, spurred them on. And that's I've lost my train of thought because it was so bad. It was so bad.
No, I liked it. If I'm laughing, it was good.
You did get an approving nod from our producer here, Gino Botero, for your Nainggolan love. Huge Nainggolan fan over here.
I think you're right, though. A little bit of resolve from Spalletti's charges at Inter. I've been, kind of impressed with what I've seen from them in the second half of their Champions League matches, and that hasn't necessarily translated domestically in Serie A. They've had a few hiccups. So, like you said, Gianluca, doesn't matter how you play, you get the result. They're now at 6 points, and they're top of a tough group.
And Spurs now, they get the back-to-back against PSV in their next 2 matches, home and away. So if Spurs don't come away with 6 points from those 2 PSV games, you can pretty much chalk this one up and say they're toast, right?
Yeah, this was always going to be a tough group. And with PSG winning as well, it's just going to be a tough group for them.
Looking forward to Arsenal, Tottenham in the knockout stages of the Europa League.
We'll get to the Europa League later. We'll save it for the end of the show. We got an Arsenal and a Milan supporter here. So, Europa League is on the docket maybe at the end. Inter gets the win, and you mentioned our lovely stat about some Serie A sides today. And let's flip over to another one in Group C. The other match that I think a lot of people had their eye on today. And Anthony, I know you watched this one closely. Napoli against Liverpool. I thought this was going to be not a comfortable Liverpool win, but I pegged Liverpool to take the points, and they were pretty woeful, and credit has to go to Napoli, and they get their goal right at the end from Lorenzo Insigne, and they're sitting pretty now in Group C. Yeah,
I was expecting a lot from this match as well. Two teams that really like to press, not so much for Napoli now that they're under the control of Carlo Ancelotti, but this is a team that's finding ways to win, and that wasn't necessarily the case last year in Serie A for Napoli. They found ways to lose at times, and I think you have to give credit to Ancelotti because he's brought that winner's mentality to this group, and Insigne has obviously benefited the most so far this season and ended up scoring the winning goal. So a lot of credit I think has to go to Ancelotti, but I didn't really I was kind of disappointed by Liverpool because obviously they lost Keita early on, but they never really seemed to get going, and with no shots on target at all in this game. And I think that's the first time that's happened in a Champions League match for them since February 2006. So that's a bit of a concern as well.
I looked it up. They have not failed to hit target in any match in 6 years in all competition. And after, that three-headed attack of Salah, Mane, and Firmino kind of shattered some goal-scoring records in Champions League last year. They look quite tepid today. That paired with, unfortunately, Naby Keita, who joined in the summer from RB Leipzig. Loads of potential there. Just a great box-to-box two-way player who's sort of been slowly acclimated to the first team under Jurgen Klopp this year. Came off quite early. He was brought off. It was a non-contact injury, and he was taken off on a golf cart. So hopes are that that won't be too grave of an injury or too long-term for the guy.
Fabinho came in late in that one, late-ish. We've talked a lot about Liverpool's depth. Do you think they can withstand an injury like that to Naby Keita? Guys like Milner, guys like Henderson, guys like Fabinho to step in without their big summer signing?
Well, I mean, they made the Champions League final last year with a threadbare midfield. Like, without Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Emre Can face a race for fitness for the final. I think Adam Lallana was out. So they've now bolstered the midfield with Naby Keita, with Fabinho from Monaco. And for all the criticism of Jordan Henderson sort of being one-dimensional, he really puts a shift in there. And I mean, I've kind of like taken the mickey with the guy for the way he runs and the way he kind of looks like so unorthodox. But he's a good captain, and he's a good sort of focal point in that midfield that kind of does that kind of greasy work that no one else wants to do. You know what I mean? So I think they're far better off than last year. They haven't started the Champions League campaign, as like sort of, well as they were last year. But I don't think there's any point counting them out after, 2 group matches.
Yeah, definitely.
And just to add to that point, I mean, Keita hasn't exactly started every single game for Liverpool either this season. Klopp has gone to great lengths to ease him into the lineup to avoid a situation like this, I think. And unfortunately, it has happened. But there are a lot of good pieces in this Liverpool team. I think the signings of Keita and Fabinho have brought out the best in Jorginho Wijnaldum. I think the additional competition has spurred him on as well. And I think there are definitely enough pieces to get by, at least if this injury lasts a couple months. I think they'll be okay.
And I mentioned how they were so robust in attack last year. I found an interesting stat because today Harry Kane scored his 10th Champions League goal in his 12th match, which is tied with Wissam Ben Yedder for the second quickest to get to that mark. Tied, 3 players tied for top. Sadio Mane registered 10 goals in his first 11 matches. Roberto Firmino, 10 goals in his first 11 matches. And my body double, Adriano, did so. You'll remember the rotund Brazilian striker also did so in 11 matches. So they have the tools. They have a dynamic attack. It might take a little bit of time to kind of unearth that.
And from a Napoli perspective, Anthony, I mean, you've watched a lot of them this season. They're on top of this group now, 4 points. Liverpool and PSG on 3. Red Star, who I think everybody expected to be sort of the whipping boys of this group, they're on 1 right now. So it's a 3-way battle for those 2 spots. What has Carlo Ancelotti really changed here? Because he didn't come in and make sweeping changes. And why would you? Maurizio Sarri's Napoli last year were so great. But we saw a different kind of formation and a different tactical setup from them today.
Yeah, I mean, it looked at first like a back 3. Then they seemed to play Maksimovic out wide in a full-back role. It gave him the option of playing a back 3 on the attack and then reverting to a back 4 when defending. So there's that flexibility that we never saw under Sarri. And that's not a knock against Sarri. That's just the way he likes to play his football with a 4-3-3 and everyone in strict roles. But with Ancelotti, he's used more than 20 players in his squad already. And not only that, most of these players have gotten starts in Serie A. So that's a key difference. And the goal, obviously, is to make sure that these guys can last the entire season and to play in multiple competitions. That wasn't the case last year, where they kind of faded and they had to choose between the Champions League and Europa League and chasing the Serie A crown with Juve. So there were certain things that just didn't happen, and Ancelotti's kind of liberated this squad.
Yeah, bang on, Anthony. I mean, you'll remember how Fawzi Goulam, the fullback, was so influential for them last year when he went down and then was replaced with Rui. It was a clear sort of drop in quality. So I think Napoli's going to benefit from sort of Ancelotti giving these players opportunities, rotating the squad. Like, look, they're going to play no fewer than 50 matches this year, maybe 60 in all competitions. So, and we talked about Ancelotti, like he is sort of the savant of tournament football. He's won more Champions League titles than any active manager, and there's no reason to doubt the guy.
We've got a lot of vowels in this room here, a lot of vowels in these last names. So I have to say, a good day, Chandler, like you mentioned, and a good couple days for Serie A sides. It's the first time since 2005, November 2005,
Wow.
that 4 Serie A sides have won on the same Champions League match day. We had Juve and Roma yesterday, and Napoli and Inter today. So that puts a lot of smiles on some faces.
Bueno Natale, you know what I mean?
That was really just before the death of Serie A, you can kind of call it, before Calciopoli hit. So that's a great sign.
The Calciopoli, do you want to go into greater detail about
Absolutely not.
No, I think we'll
thank you.
pass on that one today. And
Yo,
move
you
on.
want to talk about like sort of the inverse of that stat though? How about the English teams? They went 1 for 4. City got the win yesterday. We saw United. That was abysmal. I kind of did not want to even bring them up, so we'll leave it at that. But today, Spurs dropping a result, Liverpool dropping a result. So that is now, 4 defeats after 2 match days this year in the group stage for English teams. Last year, they had a total of 3. So I guess the most important thing is we got to get Arsenal back into the Champions League, and we can right some of these wrongs. You know what I mean? Do it for me, Unai Emery. I know you're listening right now, my guy.
Yeah, we won't make any sweeping judgments about the status of English or Italian football, right? It's very small sample size, Still early days, but good signs for some Serie A clubs. Let's close off Group C. PSG in the early match of the day, Chandler, just blew away Red Star Belgrade, and Neymar, for all the flack that he tends to take, and there's a lot of it, when he's on, like today, there are few guys that I'd rather watch.
Look, we know that Neymar, he kind of rubs me the wrong way like a pair of corduroy dungarees, but there's no getting away from his performance today was otherworldly. I mean, we talked about individual. Wow, I can't speak English. I should try Italian. You know what I mean? I might as well at this point. We talked about individual performances today. Neymar. I mean, my word. He's the first guy to score off 2 direct free kicks in the Champions League since 2009. But that might not even have been his best goals today, because the one that was in between the two was just, wow, beautiful. I mean, look. Apologies to Red Star Belgrade. You're not on the level of PSG. And, were it not for Canadian international shot stopper Milan Borjan in some kind of timely interventions, this could have been like 12, 15, 1. Like, we were watching it together, and I was making some noises that aren't fit for a sponsored podcast while I was watching it. It was just obscene from Neymar and Cavani and Mbappe. And I mean, like, all over the pitch, they were amazing.
Yeah, you look at some of the numbers from this game for Neymar in particular. 7 shots on target, 7 take-ons completed. One of those a really filthy nutmeg down by the touchline. 5 chances created. He scored the hat trick. He's now got 30 Champions League goals already. His career is still relatively, at least in Europe, still relatively young. He's tied now with Kaká, one of Anthony's favorites, for the most goals in the Champions League by a Brazilian. He's been involved in 49 goals in 49 Champions League games in his career.
Jeez.
And, he's played obviously at Barcelona and he's played at PSG, 2 massive clubs. We're going to blow a lot of smaller sides away. So there's some of that in there, but the numbers are mind-blowing from this guy.
Yeah, and you know what? That's now the 5th time PSG have won a Champions League match by a 4-goal or more margin since the start of last year. And I don't know if anyone caught it, Graham Souness, who... Graham, if you're listening, quit your day job, because we know he's been ragging on Pogba for like the dumbest reasons. But apparently he said after the match, I assume on BT Sports coverage, that Neymar took the easy way out going to PSG. Like, you know what? If you pay a 200 million euro transfer fee for me and give me like obscene weekly wages, I will go play in the whatever NASL for like the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Like, I don't care, whatever.
I'm sure the Tampa Bay Rowdies can offer that salary.
Look, if the team is available on FIFA 19, I will play for them if they pay me, okay? Regardless of employer.
Neymar and PSG, look, I think we tipped them to come out of this group. I think a lot of people tipped them to come out with Liverpool. It could be that they come out with Napoli now, but after that pretty ugly performance from PSG in their opener against Liverpool, they bounced back. I think Marco Verratti, having him back there, made a big difference, and he can combine with Adrien Rabiot, and then we know about what they can do going forward. There's questions defensively. Are they good enough defensively, especially when there seems to be such a like a gap between the front three and everybody else. And I think Thomas Tuchel is working to fix that. And Chandler, you watch a lot more PSG, I think, than either of us here. Is he slowly starting to implement some tactics that maybe give people some reason to believe they can be a real force in the Champions League?
Yeah, I think so. Look, we know they're going to be very fluid and organic going forward. Goals are never going to be a problem for PSG, whether they're playing, Red Star Belgrade or Stade de Reims and Ligue 1 or whatever. But the issue was that they didn't really, address a dearth of defensive midfield options. We've seen Marquinhos get the gig. Here's the thing. You don't really need a defensive midfielder if the other team doesn't have the ball, which was, the case today with Red Star. So we saw Verratti was back. Rabiot seems to be coming into form after, quite a mercurial summer for the young Frenchman. So I think slowly things are coming into place. And look, if they don't have competition domestically, they can kind of put all their eggs in one basket. Like, I think it'd be daft to count out PSG. They're still actually my favorites to win the tournament this year.
We'll revisit that as the tournament goes along.
Save the clip. Save it.
Save that. And we cannot, finish with that match without acknowledging the one goal from Red Star Belgrade from Marko Marin, who plays in Serbia.
Chelsea legend. Marko
legend.
Marin, loaned out 4 times, I believe, during his Chelsea spell, then sold to Olympiacos and is now at Red Star Belgrade. Yeah, that's one of those names that when he pops up, you're like, oh, this guy's still playing football.
Yeah, and I saw a stat. I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like 7,000 minutes since his last Champions League goal, like matching Moussa Sissoko's record. So good for you, Marco.
Yeah, sounds about right. It's been a while. So that's the Group C story. Let's flip over to Group A, and we can start here with Atletico and Club Brugge. A 2-1 win for Atleti. Antoine Griezmann with both goals. Anthony, this match had your favorite goal of the day, and it wasn't actually one of the Griezmann goals.
No, it wasn't. It was Club Brugge's equalizer at the time from Arnaud Groneveld. His equalizer was, it was a curling strike right into the side netting from about, I would say 35 yards, right from the left side of the pitch. It was very picturesque. Not something I think you'll see on the highlight reels just because of the caliber of player and club, but I think it's worth your time if you have a chance to check it out.
And apologies to Koke, I undersold him. He got one late at the end to make it 3-1. So
how could you do? He sat down for an interview with Anthony days ago, and you overlook him.
No hard feelings, please.
I didn't know we were talking about goals of the day. So that was your goal of the day. It
was.
Club Brugge. Do you got one, Gianluca?
I like the Rakitic one personally.
Ooh.
The technique, if you haven't seen it, we talked about that match earlier, and Messi stole the show, and rightly so, he gets all the attention. But the technique on the Rakitic volley is out of this world. Both legs off the ground, off the post and in. That was my favorite one today.
And if you haven't seen that goal, jump in the theScore mobile app, go into the Champions League river. We've put a bunch of the best goals of the day in there, which includes my favorite goal. Like I said, the second Neymar one, my young son, Kylian Mbappe, cut the ball back in the box and kind of Neymar caught it in stride, completely elongating his left leg and just kind of stabbing it beyond the keeper, which that would be a tie for my favorite goal of the day. We can't overlook Adam Reach's goal for Sheffield Wednesday today. 2 Golazzos in the matter of days for the Owls. So hoot hoot to Adam Reach.
You're keeping a close eye on that one, as the Champions League games were going on.
Well, I was sitting next to an Aston Villa fan today.
That's true.
So
Shout
I got to
out to
kind of
Tom.
punch down a little bit,
The other match in that group, and a shameless plug segment here, Chandler, you wrote about Monaco before today's game against Dortmund and the problems that they're having and the need for patience as the season goes along. They're going to have to show some more patience because they got battered again today, 3-0 by Dortmund.
They did another good performance from Dortmund. Look, I would encourage everyone to go read it. It's quite a detailed look at, in short, kind of a risky transfer policy where we're selling our emerging stars for big money, fees, and then sort of refreshing the stock with younger players. Well, those younger players haven't quite acclimated or come to form right now for, Le Monégasque manager Leonardo Jardim, and they're hurting. They're in the bottom 3 in France, and they were outplayed all over the park today in a comprehensive 3-0 victory for Borussia Dortmund. And while I kind of want to point fingers at Monaco, it would be wild not to highlight Borussia Dortmund. I talked, the podcast on the weekend about how, they vaulted over Bayern Munich for top spot in the Bundesliga and how they look really, really good under Lucien Favre, a manager I really, really like, and how maybe it'd be, don't count them out. And what we saw today was like sort of a full team performance. And I said, the two ways that Borussia Dortmund could win the league, or the two variables they need, is one, they need a healthy Marco Reus. He was amazing today. And they need Paco Alcacer to chip in with maybe 20, 25 league goals. Paco Alcacer missed a penalty today. Moments later, he scored. He's now scored in every match for Dortmund. Pair that with Marco Reus looking top tier again. And Jadon Sancho, I cannot speak enough about this guy. He does not turn 19 until March. He's leading all of Europe's top 5 leagues with 5 assists in 125 minutes. Like, I don't have like a calculator in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's some kind of like obscene number. And he's now got 2 in the Champions League. So he's got 7 assists. I mean, like I said, the kid's not even turning 19 until March. I mean, Manchester City, a club who is really struggling to move kids through their academy up to the top tier, like a Phil Foden or a Brahim Diaz, must be looking at their former academy member Sancho and saying, that's the one that got away, because he looks absolutely amazing out wide, cutting in. He's kind of reminding me of that 1 year of Ousmane Dembele at Borussia Dortmund, where he seemed to assist every one of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's goals. So, credit to Dortmund. They look really, really good.
Yeah, and they did that without Christian Pulisic as well, who has a calf injury. He's probably going to miss the upcoming international slate for the United States, but Dortmund, a lot of young talent, a lot of exciting young talent, as they always seem to have, right? We're talking about Borussia Dortmund, and they're now on 6 points, along with Atletico. Monaco and Club Brugge looks like could be over for them already, so Dortmund and Atletico in good shape there. Speaking of young American talents, Group D, Weston McKennie and Schalke, 88th minute goal, his first for the club to get a 1-0 win over Lokomotiv Moscow. Look, Group D is sort of the forgotten group in the Champions League, right? The group of life, if you will, because every team, I think going into it, thought they would have a chance to get through. You look at it now, Lokomotiv Moscow might already be out of it. Choo-choo. It's a big win for Schalke, and also a big win, 1-0 for Porto as well. Shout out to our colleague Jonathan Savetta, who I'm sure enjoyed that one. Musa Marega gets the goal against Galatasaray.
Yo, actually, that Musa Marega goal is pretty jokes, because it's a header off a corner, and he's unmarked, so whatever. Like, it's not that challenging of a goal. Even I've scored a few of those, but he sort of floats in the air. And if you ever see Musa Marega, like, he was born without a neck. So, like, when scoring headers, necks are such like an essential part of like sort of generating that power. I hope that you caught that on video. Like, but Marega, like, that was great. But yeah, you know what? Like, Schalke, really bad start to the year. They finished runner-up in the Bundesliga last year under Domenico Tedesco. Very young, unassuming manager we didn't know a lot about. And now they've bounced back, and that was a great performance. And Weston McKennie, who, you can play back the part from the other podcast where I said he's going to be better than Christian Pulisic. Like, I just love watching him play in the midfield, and it's a young midfield. So full credit to Schalke, the Gelsenkirchen club. I'm really happy for them.
I think that'll just about do it for the Champions League today, guys. Those are all of the groups that were in action. Very quickly. Okay, tomorrow, Europa League, Arsenal and Milan. No, I'm just kidding. I see the look on Gino's face over here. We're not going to get
That's the
into
real
that.
competition, by the way.
I know that's the one that you guys are real excited about. We'll have coverage of that on the theScore app tomorrow and in the following days, and going into the weekend when we will be recording another podcast. Audio only this time. You don't have to stare at us, so you can rejoice about that. Chandler's over here looking very down about it, but it's all right. That'll do it. So I will say thank you very much to Michael Chandler.
Grazie.
And the pronunciation is excellent, Chandler. Very good.
Thank you.
And to Anthony Lopopolo.
Thank you very much.
Most importantly, thank you guys for listening. And if you did, for watching. Thank you very much to Gino Botero for putting all the hard work in to get this produced.
Hey, yo.
I'm Gianluca Nesci. We'll talk to you guys soon.